Hello everyone, my name is James. Welcome to King's Fine Woodworking. A few people who have built our Adirondack chair or Adirondack rocker have expressed some concern that theirs is starting to rack like this. Now there's two reasons why that can happen. One is that you used lumber that was green or basically still very wet. Or two, that the holes that were drilled, the pre-drill holes, were actually too large for the screws, resulting in a relatively loose fit. And if you happen to do both those together, then the rack could end up being fairly bad. And that's what happened with that test rocker that I just showed you. I used wet wood and I over-drilled the holes. So I have a solution that I want to share with everybody for that problem. So if you've made the mistake of using wood that wasn't yet dried, or you over-drilled the screw holes and it racks, it's okay. Your chair's fine. I've developed these two braces here, and I'm going to give you the download a template for them. And they fit in the back, and they can't even be seen from the front, and this will 100% stop any racking. It doesn't matter how loose the holes are or how wet the wood was when you started. And I'll show you how to build it. Okay, so this is the brace for the Adirondack chair and the rocker. It's the braces for both. You'll need two pieces, and I've basically got two views of the piece. This is like the top view with the board flat. This face will go to the chair. This is the top side. This is the bottom side. And over here, this is the bottom side, this is the top side. So we've just taken this board, which would be flat in this orientation, and I've rotated it to this orientation to show you this part here. And so a flat miter cut. So overall, the big length, the longest length of the board is from the long angle here to the long angle here, and that's 14 and 3/32. And this miter cut is 24 degrees, and this miter cut on this side is 25 degrees. Once we take that board and we rotate it this way, we'll catch the bevel cuts. The bevel cut here is 21 degrees, and the bevel cut here is 12 degrees. So the first thing we want to do is set a blank board up, and I'm going to cut this angle right here. We're going to cut both the 24 degree and the 12 degree at the 24 degree and the 21 degree at the same time. So I'm also going to put these measurements down on a PDF so that you can have them to go, and it's going to be free for everybody, but I'm going to show you how to build it because that's more important. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over to 24 degrees. This is the miter, this is the flat cut, 24 degrees. Now the bevel is the back of the saw here, and if you remember, we want the bevel at 21 degrees. So I'm rotating it down to 21 degrees. You will have to have a chop saw to make this cut relatively easy. Okay, so once that's done, I've just got a long 2x4, and so I'm just going to cut it here. And that's going to be my first end. Okay, so I've written on it here, and I've got it standing up like this, which shows you the writing kind of helps you to orient it to the board there on the page. And then when I make the other cut, that it's down like this. This is how we made the first cut too, so I'm not doing anything tricky. This was the side that was down to begin with. Now the length is 14 and 3/32 of an inch. That's from the longest point to the longest point. So we'll turn this up on edge. We'll hook the longest point, which is the top back side of that bevel. We'll make a mark at 14 and 3/32. Then I have a saddle here. You could just use a square, but a saddle kind of helps me get it around the corner and get that line onto the face, which is important. And just to be safe, I want that line to cover the whole face, the whole top of it there. And then what I will do is I need to know that my cut's going to go about like that, but I need my blade, the right side of my saw blade has got to be just to the left of that line. So let's not forget, we've got 25 degrees here, and I was at 24. So I'll need to bump that over by 1 degree. And if you take the time to set it exactly, then your piece will come out exact as well. And that was the miter. Now the bevel is at 12 degrees. So this is the back, which is the bevel, and we'll crank this down to 12 degrees right there. And then when the saw cuts down, I want to make sure that the blade is on the outside of the straight line that we just made, because I want that much wood left, basically. So I want the saw blade to the left of this straight line. See, to the left there of the straight line. And that's it. So I'll just kind of line it up to where it looks good. Now if you're off by a 16th or 32nd, it's probably not going to make any difference at all, but get it as accurate as you can. And then we'll chop it, and there you go. That's one of them. You've got one board with 2 compound angles on it by following this technique. You cut the miter and the bevel both at the same time. Let's just test it and see how well it fits. Okay, so take note of which is the top, and then that face goes to the chair. That faces the chair, and we'll slide it in here. We'll move it to the right a little bit, and as you can see, it fits perfectly. So it helps if you can measure those things carefully. And you can see this is not going to fit on this side. It does fit on the right, but it won't fit on the left. And that's because we have to have a mirror image. These boards have to be mirror images. So we're going to follow the same technique. I'm going to leave my 2x4 on the left side of the saw, but I'm going to set up the angle now on the right side. I'm going to set up the angles, the miter and the bevel, both here on the right side. And you can see how this progresses, and it's actually really easy. This will help us make a mirror image. So I set up my first cut. I've set the miter, the flat miter, at 24, and I'm setting the bevel at 21. And I'm cutting this off. This stuff is a waste, this little triangle that's coming off here. And that's because, you know, we have this left over here because it this is going to be the mirror image. This is the left-hand version of that board that we just cut, and that board was the right-hand version. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to make a note here. This is the top. That's the first one we cut with the 24 miter and the 21 bevel. And same thing here. This face to the chair. And then we'll slide the board down to make the other cut. Same exact way we did before. But remember, we got to go to 25 degrees for this miter cut. So I move it by a degree. We'll lock it in. And the bevel has to change, remember. For the second cut, it's got to go back to 12 again. And now that that's set, we're good to go. Now the length hasn't changed. The length is still 14 and 3/32, so hook the longest point, 14 and 3/32, and we'll lay the board back down with our saddle. And you see how this one is being marked kind of on the other side here. And I can use the saddle again over here to make sure the line goes straight the whole way. And then the same thing, we want to make sure the saw blade cuts to the left of that line, left of the straight line. Just barely to the left of that straight line. That way we get the full length of our piece. And if you have a laser on your saw, chop saw, it can help out. If you don't, no big deal. You can set it up. All right, so we're going to chop that, and that's it. That's all there is to it. This is now the left-hand version. And you see we have a left and a right. And watch, here's how you can check them. Put them together. And you see they form the V there and the V there. So now you know we have a left-hand board and a right-hand board. And I basically just left my 2x4 on the same side of the saw, but I moved my bevel over. And I have some space at the bottom between the two because I'm going to slide the board all the way to the right to get it close to the edge of the back slats. That way if I get more spread, I'm going to get more rack resistance. So I am going to push them all the way into the back slats as close as I can. They're going to touch in some places, they won't touch in others. Make sure the bevel angles are lined up nice and tight. Bevel and miter angles both. And we'll just tap them in snug, and then we'll put some screws in. So 2.5 or 3-inch deck screws, the same stuff we used to build the chair with, is perfect. And of course these braces are just made out of 2x4s, so you could get cedar or redwood or just a regular 2x4. They're pretty protected from the sun anyway, being in the position that they're in. They're not really visible from the front, and the chair leans back, so the direct sunlight's not going to hit them, and you can put a finish on them. I don't think they'd rot, especially once you get a finish on them. So you'll screw in from the top, and you'll screw in from the bottom. So we actually tested 3 different methods of rack resistance on these things for on one of our earlier prototype chairs, and then we purposely built a chair that was very, very loose and tested rack resistance on that. We let that one sit outside for about a month, and even with changes in weather and humidity and everything else, it stayed pretty solid, pretty rack resistant. So I think this is going to be a perfect long-term solution for anybody who has put their chair together and with the wood being green, basically not dried, not kiln dried, not air dried, or perhaps they put the wood together, they put the chair together and pre-drilled the screw holes a little bit too big. This is going to solve that problem, so you don't have to get rid of your chair or take it apart or anything else like that in the future. So obviously I'm just putting the other one on the second side here. Sai is holding it for me there. So there's about 5 or 6 minutes left in the video here. If you stay with us till the end, you'll see me put these on a rocker, and then you'll see me put them on a rocker that I actually built purposely very loose. I used a green wood for it, and I over-drilled the size of the screw holes, and you'll see how this fixes it up and just locks the rocker up rock solid, and there's no rack left in it. These are also really easy repairs. The whole video took us probably 15 or 20 minutes, and I actually, during the time of the video, it's all real time, I cut them out step by step, showed you how to do it, and assembled them. So I think you probably, if you're not doing video work, you can assemble one of these in under 5 minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I guess not assemble, but cut the parts out and screw it together and fix the chair. And you can see from the front, you can't really even see the braces. I'll show you some shots from straight ahead too. Okay, so here's a rocker that I was talking about. So another thing that may happen is when somebody's putting their chair together, if they get the front arm sloped at something other than 5 degrees like it's supposed to be, and you cut one of these braces, the brace might be too long. And that's okay. Or brace might be too short, and that's okay too. So I purposely cut this brace about 1/4 of an inch long to show you that it's just not really fitting. So if this happens to you, it's also a very easy fix. You just take it back over to the chop saw. If you think it's about 1/8 of an inch long or 3/16 of an inch long, just mark that. Just keep it on the side wherever you cut your very last cut, so you don't have to change the bevel or anything, and just shorten it up a little bit. You might have to shorten it 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. It just depends on, if your chair is not built perfectly to plan. And then put it back in, and you can see it fits perfectly. So it's real simple. If you've built your chair a little bit off, you can see these angles will still line up just fine. If your arms are high or low or whatever, the angles will still line up fine. You just may have to adjust the overall length of the brace. And that's not hard to do. Alright, so basically the same thing, obviously, for the rocker. We want to make sure that we put the brace in all the way to the outside, so where the top is getting close to the edge of the back slats. Oh, and I'm going to put a link in the video down below to for you to get a hold of these this download. You don't necessarily need it. You can just, if you follow the video, you can see it's just those 4 bevels and then the length, or the two miters, 2 bevels, and then the length. So it's pretty straightforward. But you can download that PDF document of it if you want, and that will allow you to do it again in the future without having to have your phone or something open while you're watching the video on YouTube. That might make it a little bit easier. And I want to give a shout out to all the people in our community. We have a community on Facebook, King's Fine Woodworking Community. And we had several people pitch in a couple of ideas on how to fix the racking problem. I think 3 or 4 people in our community ended up having chairs that were too wet, and or the screws were too loose, and so their chair began to rack a little bit over time. So this is hopefully going to help them out. And we routinely do updates for anything that we build. If we find something that fixes it, modifies it, or makes it better, then we do that. And we'll send the updates out to everybody who ever bought a set of plans. And if you like our videos, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe. Click that link down below, and if you click the bell icon, that will notify you of any future videos we have coming out. We have quite a bit of videos coming out this fall. We have a good lineup. Okay, so there we go. That's it for the rocker. That's all done. I'm going to flip the rocker around and kind of let you get a view from it, of it from the front. And you can see the braces pretty much disappear back there. They're not really visible at all when the chair's in its ordinary orientation. And of course those braces were kind of standing out from the backside because they're just plain white 2x4s. Once they're stained the color of the rocker, they probably would become very hard to see, very hard to notice at any rate. Alright, so there is that. Alright, so here was my test rocker. I built this with green lumber that was not yet dried or kiln dried, and I overdid the holes. I used number 10 holes for a number 8 screw.
Okay.
And it didn't take long. It took about 3 weeks for this thing to rack. You can see how easy that racked. So we're going to put some braces in here and we're going to test it out. Same basic concept. We just put them in, spread them out, and screw them in from the top and the bottom. Of course, now I'm dealing with some junky twisted 2x4s because I just ran to the Home Depot to put something together for this video instead of getting redwood for it. But there we go. We got it in tight, and we'll hold it tight, and we'll get the screws in, so that'll be nice and secure. And that was it. It's just that simple. So now if you take a look at it, it doesn't rack at all, no matter what she does to push on it. I guess hard to tell, huh, because she could be faking it, but she's not. It doesn't rack. You can see the whole thing, the whole chair is like a rigid box structure now. And our test has shown that this stays rigid, so I think it will fix anybody's problem. And we'll give you one last look at this one from the front, head on, right between the grooves there, between the slots of the back slots, and you can see that it's not really visible, so it's not really a problem. We really tried to create something that wasn't an eyesore that might be out there to fix that problem. All right, so that's it. All three of these, both rockers and the chair, have been modified. They have the braces in there, so these will never rack in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.